Hi guys, welcome to Yoga Fitness virtually. My name is Romina. Today is October 20th. We will be going through a 45-minute yoga fitness class. We will be doing some seated poses, some laying down poses, as well as some standing series poses. I will guide you through all of it. And thank you so much for joining me today. So whenever you're ready, we'll get started. If you could all meet me in a child's pose, that would be great. Sending your glutes back to your heels, extending your arms out. Feeling free to take this child pose traditional or wide-legged, however you prefer for today. Making sure to come into your breath here as we start class. I like to start my classes with a quote for the day. So my quote is, "It all begins and ends in your mind. What you give power to has power over you if you allow it." As you're in your child's pose here, really focusing in on the breath, slowly warming up the body. Releasing any negative thoughts that may have crossed your path before entering the class, and taking this time to really focus in only on yourself, thinking positive affirmations for the remainder of class if possible. These next 45 minutes are all about you, benefiting your mind, your body, and your spirit. Maybe setting an intention for your class today, something that you wish to achieve or you think about sporadically throughout the class. Whenever you're ready, moving into our next inhale, inhaling up into a seated position, transitioning into some neck stretches. Maybe going down on your knees, or if you would like in a crisscross position, whatever you would like for today. Placing your hands on top of your knees. On our next inhale, inhaling, lifting that chest up, elongating that spine. And exhaling as we release all our breath out, stretching into some neck tilts, making sure not to overextend the neck here, listening to your body, only going as far as you can, whenever you are most comfortable. Inhaling as we come back up to center, filling in through those lungs, extending through that spine. And exhaling as we tilt down to the other side. Again, making sure not to overextend the neck, but also releasing any tension, making sure not to hold any tension in the neck, unclenching that jaw. Inhaling back up to center, stretching out through that spine. And exhaling as we tilt over, releasing any tension in the neck. Feeling free to take this at your own breath, at your own pace. Going through 2 more rotations on each side and meeting me back at center whenever you're ready. So whenever you're back at neutral position, on our next inhale, inhaling up through center, extending through that chest, extending out that spine. And exhaling as we slowly release into some neck rotations, letting go of any tension in the back of the neck. Feeling free to let loose your head, listening to your body, making sure your shoulders are pulled away from your ears if possible. And always making sure to keep breathing here. Whenever you're ready, on your next breath, tilting over to the other side. Again, making sure to keep breathing here, listening to your body, feeling every stretch as we slowly start to awaken every muscle. Taking however longer you need, following your own breath. Whenever you're ready, meeting me back at a neutral position. On our next exhale, transitioning into our tabletop position, going into some cat-cow poses. As we're in our tabletop position, making sure that our shoulders are stacked over our wrists and that our hips are stacked over our knees, as well as making sure that our back is flat and parallel towards our mat. On our next inhale, dropping that belly, keeping that gaze out directly in front of us, cow. And exhaling as we arch through that spine, rounding out that spine, keeping that gaze towards the back of our mat, cat. Inhaling as we drop that belly down, keeping that gaze directly in front of us, cow. And exhaling as we round out through that spine, keeping that gaze in between our knees, towards the back of our mat, cat. Feeling free to go through 3 more rotations of this at your own pace and meeting back at neutral tabletop position whenever you're ready. Maybe taking a couple breaths here whenever you reach neutral tabletop to readjust. Making sure that our shoulders are stacked over our wrists and that our hips are stacked over our knees. If you have any kind of wrist problem, going up into a fist position. Whatever is available for you today. Transitioning into some spinal extensions and contractions. So on our next inhale, inhaling that left arm up and right leg up, parallel towards our mat, flexing through that heel and not pointing our toes. And exhaling as we contract in, spinal contraction, bringing that elbow to your knee, curling up as best as we can. Inhale as we extend back out, keeping that gaze at the top of our mat, flexing through that heel, spinal extension. And exhaling as we release all of the breath out, bringing that elbow to our knee, crunching in as best as we can, spinal contraction. Inhaling as we extend back out into our spinal extension, making sure that our arm and leg are parallel towards our mat, flexing through that heel. And exhaling as we contract in, bringing that elbow to our knee, releasing all of our breath. and taking a breath to readjust back into neutral tabletop position. Maybe rolling out your wrists if you're feeling any pressure in them. Moving into the other side, so on our next inhale, extending that right arm up and left leg up into spinal extension. Making sure you're flexing through that heel, keeping that gaze at the top of your mat. And exhaling as we contract in, bringing that knee to your elbow. Keeping that gaze towards the back of your mat. Inhaling as we extend back out, flexing through that heel, making sure that our arm and leg are parallel towards our mat. And then exhaling as we contract in, bringing that elbow to your knee, spinal contraction. Inhaling as we extend back out, flexing through that heel, keeping that gaze at the top of your mat, spinal extension. And exhaling as we contract in, bringing that elbow to your knee, crunching in as best as we can, spinal contraction. And taking a breath here to readjust into our tabletop position. On our next inhale, tucking those toes under our body and exhaling as we extend back out into our downward dog. Feeling free to walk the dog here, shifting one weight over to the other leg. Extending out one leg, and then switching over to the other, releasing any tension in the backs of the knees, making sure that our glutes are sending up towards the sky, or towards the ceiling, and pushing our palms of our hands towards the mat, feeling that slight extension in our shoulder blades. Transitioning into our first vinyasa flow series, we will go for 2 flows here, ending in a child's pose. So on our next inhale, shifting our weight over into a high plank, dropping down to your knees if you would like for today. If you cannot stand up in the high plank, that is totally fine. Exhaling as we slowly lower our body down, making sure that our elbows are pinned against our body. And inhaling as we lift up slightly into baby cobra. Having our shoulder blades engaged, glutes engaged, keeping that gaze at the top of the mat. Inhaling as we tuck those toes under, pushing our bodies up, and exhaling as we go into our downward dog. Again, feeling free to walk the dog here as we're slowly starting to wake up our bodies. On our next inhale, shifting that weight over into a high plank, again dropping down to your knees if you would like for class today. Exhaling as we slowly lower down, making sure that our elbows are stacked or pinned against our body. And inhaling as we slowly lift up into our full cobra today. Another option for a back bend as we continue our vinyasa flows throughout the class. Making sure that our shoulders are away from your ears. Our glutes are engaged and our shoulder blades are squeezed together. And exhaling as we totally go back down into our child's pose, bringing those glutes back to your heels and extending your arms out. Child's pose will be available all throughout class today. If you're not feeling any of the stretches, you are more than welcome to drop down into child's pose or whatever stretch you would like for today. This is your own practice. You do whatever benefits your body the most. Taking a couple breaths here. With every breath, feeling your glutes slowly go down, back onto your heels, maybe feeling more grounded with your mat. So on our next inhale, slightly lifting up, tucking those toes under, and exhaling back into our downward dog. On our next inhale, slightly shifting the weight forward, bringing that gaze up towards the top of your mat, and slowly walking your feet forward to meet your hands into forward fold. Giving yourself as generous of a bend as you need. Maybe shifting the weight from one leg to the other for a bit more of a stretch. Making sure to keep breathing here. Releasing any tension in the backs of the necks. Keeping that gaze towards the back of your mat. On our next inhale, slowly inhaling up into half lift, keeping that gaze at the top of the mat, placing your hands either below your knee or above your knee, whatever you prefer for class today, and keeping your back as flat as possible. Exhaling as you slowly lower back down into forward fold, completely releasing all of the breath. Inhaling as you circle sweep those arms up into mountain pose, keeping those palms facing each other, gaze up towards the ceiling. And exhaling as you circle sweep those arms back down into our forward fold. Taking a couple breaths here to release any tension in the backs of the legs, shifting your weight from one leg to the other. Maybe bending both knees down and extending. Transitioning into that flow one more time. So on our next inhale, inhaling those arms up into half lift, squeezing your shoulder blades, keeping that gaze at the top of your mat. Again, placing your hands either below your knee or above your knees, whatever is available for you today. Exhaling as we lower back down into our forward fold, releasing any tension in the backs of the neck. Giving yourself as generous of a bend as you need. Inhaling, circle sweeping those arms up into mountain pose, keeping those palms facing each other, keeping that gaze at the top of the ceiling. And exhaling, circle sweeping those arms back down into forward fold. Bending your knees as much as you can so that the palms of your hands are next to your feet. And exhaling as we slowly walk our feet back into our downward dog. Transitioning into another vinyasa flow series, taking this at your own optional back bend. I will be going through full Cobra and up dog, so feel free to follow me if you would like, and if not, feel free to follow your own pace, your own personal back bend, and meeting me in a child's position whenever you are done. So on your next inhale, shifting that weight over into a high plank. Exhaling as we slowly lower down, making sure our elbows are pressed against our body. And inhaling as we lift up into full Cobra, engaging those shoulder blades, engaging your glutes, keeping that gaze directly in front of you. Making sure that our shoulders are not lifted up towards our ears. Inhaling as we tuck those toes under, and exhaling as we extend back into our downward dog. Transitioning into our downward dog, or our up dog for this next round. So on our next inhale, shifting that weight forward into a high plank, again dropping down to your knees if you would like for today. Exhaling as we slowly lower down, making sure our elbows are pressed against our body. And inhaling as we lift up into full Cobra. Shoulders away from our ears, engaging your glutes, squeezing your shoulder blades. For up dog, engaging the quads so that legs hover over the ground. Slowly dropping your knees down and exhaling back into our child's pose. Taking a couple breaths here. Maybe going back to that intention that you set at the beginning of class. On our next inhale, slightly lifting our body up, tucking those toes under, and exhaling as we extend back into our downward dog. Keeping that gaze towards the back of your mat, extending through those shoulder blades. On our next inhale, shifting that weight over into a high plank, exhaling as we bring that right leg in between our hands, dropping that left knee down onto our mat and untucking that toe so that it's completely flat on our mat. On our next inhale, inhaling your chest up into a low lunge. Readjusting the body here so that your knee is stacked over your ankle and you're still able to see your toes in front of your knee. Also making sure that your hips are aligned with your mat. Option to keep your hands on your hips, on top of your knee, or inhaling them up into mountain pose. Whatever you prefer for class today. Making sure to keep breathing here. On our next exhale, sweeping those arms back down to frame the foot, placing them next to your foot, tucking that back toe under, and exhaling as we extend our right leg back into our downward dog. Feeling free to walk the dog out here, rebalancing the body, feeling the stretch that we have just completed on our right leg. Again, always making sure to keep breathing here. The breath is so important for our practice. So on our next inhale, shifting that weight over into a high plank, exhaling as we bring that left foot forward in between our hands, dropping that right knee down on our mat and untucking that toe. On our next inhale, inhaling that chest up so that we are in a low lunge. Making sure that our knee is stacked over our ankle and that we are still able to see our toes in front of our knee. Also making sure that our hips are squared to our mat. Option to keep your arms on your hips, on top of your knee, or inhaling them up over into mountain, making sure that your palms are facing each other, keeping that gaze up towards the ceiling. Taking a couple breaths here, and wherever you chose to keep your hands. Listening to your body, feeling that slight stretch, and the upper part of your leg, upper thighs. Exhaling as we slowly lower our arms back down, place next to your foot. Inhaling as we tuck that back toe under, and exhaling as we send that left leg back into our downward dog. Again, transitioning into our vinyasa flows here, going through 2 series, choosing the own back bend of your choice, and meeting me in a child's position whenever you are done. next inhale, really making sure to inhale through the nose, expanding your lungs, feeling your lungs fill with air. And exhaling through the mouth as you release all of that breath, feeling your lungs contract. Taking a couple breaths here as we are transitioning into our standing series. Again, you are more than welcome to drop down into your child's pose whenever you feel like it. It is available to you all throughout practice. So on our next inhale, slightly lifting over, tucking those toes under, and exhaling back into our downward dog. Inhaling as we lift that right foot up into our three-legged dog, flexing through that heel and not through that foot or that toe. Making sure that you're only lifting up your leg as far as you can while maintaining your hips square towards the mat. Inhaling as you lift over, and exhaling as you bring that foot in between your hands into a high lunge. On your next inhale, inhaling your arms up and out, completely parallel towards your mat, pivoting that back foot 90 degrees so that it is parallel towards the back of your mat. Making sure that your palms are facing down towards your mat, that you are completely parallel towards your mat. Making sure that your knee is stacked over your ankle and that your front heel is running in a straight line against your back arch. Warrior two. Taking a couple breaths here. On your next inhale, turning that front hand palm up towards the ceiling and cartwheeling those arms back into reverse warrior. Option to keep that gaze up towards the ceiling or down towards your mat, as well as option to keep this hand placed along the side of your leg or wrapped around your back. Whatever you prefer for class today. Engaging your core slightly, making sure to keep breathing. On your next exhale, cartwheeling those arms back down into warrior two. Maybe taking a couple breaths to readjust here, straightening that front leg and flexing it down, releasing any pressure that you may have felt. The front knee, readjusting back into warrior two, making sure that your knee is stacked over your ankle and that your front heel runs in a straight line against the back arch of your foot. On our next inhale, hinging at the hips, reaching forward, straightening that front leg, and cartwheeling those arms down into triangle pose. Option to keep that gaze up towards the ceiling or down towards your mat. Also option to keep your hand on top of your leg or placed down on the mat. Taking a couple breaths here. Trying to align your shoulders, feeling that slight twist in your lower spine. On On our next inhale, bending through that front leg, cartwheeling our arms back up into warrior two. Bringing out our arms into a T position, having that parallel towards our mat, palms facing down. Taking a couple breaths here. On our next exhale, cartwheeling those arms back down to frame the foot, pivoting your foot back in line with your front leg or front foot. And exhaling as we bring that right leg back into our downward dog. Taking a couple breaths here to walk out the dog. Extending one leg and then the other, releasing any tension in the backs of the knees. Always making sure to keep breathing. On our next inhale, inhaling that left leg up, three-legged dog, flexing through that heel and not that toe. Only lifting up your leg as high as you can while maintaining your hips square towards the mat. Inhaling as we shift that weight over into a high plank and exhaling as we bring that left foot in between your hands. On our next inhale, inhaling our arms up and out, parallel towards our mat. Just turn to face you guys. Into warrior two. Pivoting that back foot 90 degrees so that is parallel to the back of our mat. Making sure that our palms are face down towards our mat, having our knee aligning with our ankle. And making sure that our front heel is in line with the back arch of our foot. Warrior two. Taking a couple breaths here. On our next inhale, turning that front palm up towards the ceiling and sweeping those arms back into reverse warrior. Option to keep that gaze up towards the ceiling or down towards your mat, as well as option to keep this arm on the side of your leg or wrapped around your back. This is your own practice. You choose whatever feels most beneficial to you as you listen to your body throughout all of these stretches. Taking a couple breaths here. Feeling that slight twist in the lower spine and engaging those core muscles. On our next exhale, cartwheeling those arms back down into warrior two. Maybe taking a couple breaths here to extend that front leg and bending back into it, readjusting into our warrior two. Making sure that our palms are facing down towards our mat. Our back foot is pivoted 90 degrees so that it is parallel towards the back of the mat. And then our front heel is running in line with the back arch of our foot. On our next inhale, hinging those hips forward, reaching forward, extending that front leg and cartwheeling our arms down into triangle pose. Option to keep our gaze up towards the ceiling or down towards the mat, as well as option to keep your hand placed on the mat or on top of your leg. Making sure that our shoulders are aligned here in a straight line, feeling that slight twist in your lower spine. Making sure to always continue your breath. And again, if you're uncomfortable with any of these poses, child's pose is always available throughout the class. On our next inhale, inhaling our arms back up into warrior two. Flexing back through that heel, bending through that front knee. Taking a couple breaths here. On our next exhale, cartwheeling those arms back down to frame the foot, pivoting your back foot so that it is lined with your front foot. And exhaling as we bring that left leg back into downward dog. Again, taking a couple breaths here to walk the dog. Balancing our body back. Stretching out the left side of our body just as equally as we stretch out the right side of our body. Feeling more balanced with every stretch. Flowing into 2 more vinyasa flows and meeting me in a child's pose whenever you are done. Feel free to take your own back bend of choice as we transition into some sitting down and laying down series. When you are in your child's pose, continuing to breathe. Letting your body feel every stretch that we have just done from head to toe. Focusing in on the breath as we transition into our cool down series. On our next inhale, slightly lifting up into a tabletop position, and exhaling as we swing our legs down and around into a seated position. Placing the bottoms of your feet completely flat on our mats, and maybe placing our hands side by side. On our next inhale, extending that spine up towards the ceiling, extending through that chest. Filling our lungs up. And exhaling as we slowly lower down, completely flat onto our mat, 1 vertebrae at a time. Completely releasing your legs down, flat on our mat. Taking a couple breaths here to readjust your body onto our mats. Maybe rolling out those shoulders, tucking your tailbones under. If you have a ponytail in or anything that may be bothering you or preventing you from having the back of your head completely flat on your mat, feel free to release that if you would like. On our next inhale, inhaling our arms up into a T position, palms facing up towards the ceiling. Taking a couple breaths here. On our next inhale, inhaling that right leg up, knee towards the ceiling. And exhaling it as we shift it over to the left side of our body, supine twist. Making sure that both shoulders are still pressed against our mat. Making sure to keep breathing here. For a little bit more of a stretch, tilting your head over to your right shoulder. Feeling that slight stretch in your lower spine. Taking a couple breaths. If your head is over your right shoulder, on your next inhale, slightly shifting it back up into neutral position, keeping that gaze up towards the ceiling. On your next inhale, inhaling that right leg up, untwisting that spine. And exhaling as we slowly lower our right leg down, completely flat onto our mat. Maybe taking a couple breaths here to readjust your body. Again, rolling out those shoulders, rolling out the hips. On our next inhale, inhaling that left leg up towards the ceiling. And exhaling it as we lower down to the right side of our body, supine twist. Making sure that both shoulders are completely flat on our mat. Taking a couple breaths here to feel that slight stretch in the lower spine. Again, always listening to your body, only going to wherever feels comfortable for you today. For a little bit more of a stretch, sending that head over your left shoulder. If your head is tilted over your left shoulder, inhaling it back up to center, keeping that gaze up towards the ceiling. Inhaling your left leg up, back to center, untwisting that spine. And exhaling as we lower it back down, completely flat on our mats. Transitioning into our final pose, which is Savasana. Feeling free to keep our arms side by side next to our bodies, palms facing up towards the ceiling. Another option to place both hands on top of our belly buttons. And another option is to keep one hand on top of your stomach and another one on top of your heart. Whatever you feel like doing today. As we gently cool down into our final pose, Savasana. Maybe gently, when focusing on your breath. Maybe rolling out those shoulders so that you're completely flat on your mat. Releasing any tension in the jaw. Maybe unfurrowing your brows, releasing any tension in between your eyebrows. Maybe gently fluttering your eyes closed if you haven't already. Taking this time to completely relax. Feeling all the benefits of the stretches that we have completed today. gently bringing some awareness back into your body. Slightly wiggling your fingers and your toes. Maybe swallowing a couple of times. Maybe thinking about that breath. Focusing back in on your breath. Doing a couple circles with your wrists and your ankles. To regain some control in your body. Maybe fluttering your eyes open if you haven't done so already. Thinking back to that intention that you set at the beginning of class. Thanking yourself for taking these last 45 minutes to benefit not only your body but also your mind. Whenever you're ready, slowly inhaling and meeting me in a seated position, lifting up however is most comfortable for you today. Maybe placing your hands on top of your knees. And all together as a class, taking one last final breath. So inhaling, extending those arms up into mountain pose, keeping that gaze up towards the ceiling, and exhaling as we bring those palms together, lowering them down to heart center. Namaste means the divine light in me honors the divine light in each and every one of you. Feel free to say this with me today, and if not, that is totally okay. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me for class virtually today. My name is Romina, and hope you guys all have a great rest of your week.